Hi guys, April here. Welcome back to my channel, my wishy-washy channel that has a little bit of everything on it. So today I'm making strawberry jam, so I just thought I'd take you guys along and show you how I make it. I make a lot of jam every year, and I'm a little bit behind this year on my jam making, so I'm kind of binge making in the next couple of days. So sorry I'm out of breath. I was rushing around to try to get everything ready and get my daughter all sorted out. Sorry if you have any background noise. I have a video playing for her in the background to keep her busy. She's only 19 months old, so she'll probably come out here pretty soon and you'll hear her flying around here in the background. So anyway, so everything that's on the stove here in front of me is everything that you need to make one batch of jam. Now one batch of jam should yield, oh these are very hot, should yield 8 jars. I sometimes get 8.5 or 9 jars out of a batch, so I always like to have a couple of extra jars on hand just in case. I'm going to go ahead now and throw these back in the oven because I want them to stay warm. They've been pre-sterilized, so I want them to stay in the oven and keep warm while I'm making the video. So I'm going to go ahead and put these back in. I have shut the oven off, but it's still very warm in there. I sterilized those jars for 200 or at 225 degrees for 10 minutes. You have to sterilize them for at least that amount. Some people choose to boil their jars. When you buy them new, you still have to wash them. Some of my jars are new, some of them are old and reused. But you have to sterilize them every single time before, and you always want to use a hot jar and not a warm or a cold jar when you're canning your jam. Same thing with the lids. The lids, you're going to bring this pot to a boil for 5 minutes. You want it to be at a full rolling boil for 5 minutes. I pre-assemble my jar lids so that they're ready to go. I already have the little inserts in there. Now the lids are all reusable, but the little inserts that go inside are not. You have to replace those every time you make jam. So you can buy those, they're fairly cheap, about $1.99 per box of, I believe 12, maybe 24, I'm pretty sure it's 12, but it's like $2 anyway, so it's not too much. But you have to replace those every single time if you want to have a guaranteed seal. Not everybody chooses to use those kind of lids to cans. Some people use wax. Some people use those little rubber seals. I personally would rather just spend the $1.99 and get myself some new inserts, and then it's easy peasy. So those are your lids. Again, you're going to full rolling boil for 5 minutes. Once they are done boiling, these have already boiled for 5 minutes. I'm going to leave them in the hot water until they're ready to use. And that's that. Now the certo you're going to use, I use just one box of certo. Many people prefer liquid pectin. Some people prefer just the dry certo, the dry pectin that you would measure out yourself. I just use the box because that's what this recipe calls for, and it's my favorite recipe. I've done many recipes, and this one is by far my favorite. So 1 box of certo. 7 cups of jam, or sorry, 7 cups of sugar. So this part is actually kind of disgusting, really, when you think about it. If you're somebody who's, you know, concerned about gaining weight or how much sugar you're taking in, this is not a good recipe for you. It does call for 7 cups. You get about 8 cups in a jar. Sorry, I have a fly flying around here. You do get 8 jars, so that's approximately a little better than 3/4 of a cup of sugar for every jar of jam. Now, there are recipes that you can get. There's boxes of certo that call for 1/3 less sugar. I've never personally tried those. I'm going to, but I haven't done it as of yet. And the other option is to sweeten it with Splenda. I'm very interested to do that because outside of cooking and baking, I actually use Splenda in just about everything. So I think I would like it in my jam, but my issue with that is Splenda, when you buy it granulated, which is for the purpose of baking and jelly making and that sort of thing, it's very expensive, like extremely expensive. And most of my jars of jam that I make, I don't personally use. I do sell them. So no, I'm not selling them on this channel. That's not what this is about. This is just how I make it. These are all pretty much spoken for already. This is all pre-ordered jam. So anyway, I would like to try it, but it's very expensive, and if you are making jam and you plan on making any kind of a profit, you would have to charge an arm and a leg for a small jar of jam, and that's all this makes is just a little jar, 1 cup, literally, it's a 1 cup jar. So anyway, tons of sugar, so 7 cups of sugar. Strawberries. Now, the recipe I have calls for 4.5 cups of strawberries. I always personally use 5 because for whatever reason, if I use 4.5, I cannot get 8 jars of jam. I don't know if it's because I puree it, so it's more condensed, there's less air in it, or if it's that when I skim, I'm skimming more off than I need to. I'm not entirely sure, but I definitely don't have enough for 8 cups. And I find that when I make it with 4.5 cups of strawberries, of jam, of strawberries, I find that the jam is not as rich. It's not as flavorful. It's more sweet. It tastes more sugary than it does fruity. And I definitely want a more fruity jam, not a really sweet jam. So this is everything I use anyway. So I'm going to start setting some of this stuff aside and get it out of my way. So I'm going to be using my back burner today. I hope that's okay. I know it makes it a little difficult to see, but my little one is up and she's going to be out here running around, and she's still very little, so she doesn't understand that she can't touch the stove, so I never use the front burners when she's awake. Yes, I know I could buy a stove guard, but I just find it easier just to always use the 2 back burners. I rarely make anything that requires more than 2 burners anyway. So that's it. Sugar, strawberries, lids, jars, and certo. And a good sized pot, and of course a cup of coffee. I'm going to have a quick sip of coffee because I'm very thirsty. So quick sip of coffee. So I'm going to start. I'm going to pour all of my strawberries. Now, these strawberries I've grown myself. These are not store-bought strawberries. I grow them. I puree them. You have the option. You can mash them up. Some people prefer whole fruits in their jam. Some people prefer it more like a jelly, which would be completely pureed. I kind of half puree mine so that I used to take the time to mash it up, but now I just say the heck with it and I use my blender. So it leaves little bits of fruit, but nothing really huge and chunky. If I see anything big and chunky during the processing, I'm going to mash that down because I don't like that at all in my jam. I do grow my own berries, so I prepare everything in advance. These berries were picked any time in the last 2 months or so, and as I pick them, this fly is driving me crazy. So as I pick them, I process them at that time. So I cut off the little green stems, and I wash everything, and then once it's all washed, I just throw it into freezer bags and throw it in the freezer. And then I just repeat until I eventually have a whole freezer full of berries. And when I'm ready to make jam, they're already soft, they're ready to go, they've sweetened up, and so I prefer it this way. I never use store-bought strawberries to make jam. I do use store-bought other berries to mix with my strawberry jam when I'm making other types of jam. But as far as my strawberries and raspberries go, they're always fresh and homegrown. So anyway, moving on. So I'm going to go ahead and pour this all into my stewing pot. And you want to have it sniffles. So you're going to want to make sure you scrape all of it out because, even if you only lose a teaspoon, that's actually quite a bit when you're trying to measure out just these little tiny jars of jam. So you want to scrape out as much as you can. I always have a really full sink of boiling hot water ready to go so that when I'm ready, I can go ahead and drop this stuff right into the sink. Because I do make multiple batches in a day, so not yet. I do make multiple batches in a day, so I want to start with clean things all the time, so I have to wash everything here because I don't have multiples of everything, so I have to wash everything here many times to get me through a batch. So, alright, so I'm going to wait for this to come to a boil. I'm going to add my certo to the berries while I'm bringing it to a boil. So you're going to mix that in. You want to make sure you do this now because certo takes quite a while for it to gel up and properly gel up, so you want to make sure that you're adding that very early. So I add it right at the very beginning and then stir it and then bring it to a boil. So I'm going to tell you a funny story while I'm waiting for this to come to a boil, or at least I thought it was funny anyways. This isn't my first batch today. As I said, I've make many batches, but I had only planned to record my first batch and none of the others. So I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to bore you guys and make you wait for this to come to a boil. So oh darn fly. I hate cooking or baking when there's a fly around. Drives me crazy. Anyway, so I decided I didn't want to bore you guys with bringing the jam to a boil, so I decided I was going to pause the video, so I paused it, and I don't know what I did, but when I unpaused it, it didn't unpause, so it stopped it. So I only got to this point, and then the whole rest of the batch did not record. So this is actually my second time doing this today. So if things look a little dirty, if my stove looks a little splashy with berries and stuff, that's because I've already done a batch today. And my little one's out here. Hi, my girl. Hi. So this takes quite a while for it to come to a boil. These pots take a long time to get hot, but I love them because they distribute the heat very easily. It's a thick aluminum, and when you're using a ceramic top stove and you're using the wrong kind of pot, it tends to heat up just in the center and not all the way around the edges, and then you end up with burned or just not even heat distribution. So I use my heavy aluminum all the time. And like I said, it takes a long time for it to heat up, but I just find that once it does, the process is much, much easier. So, I'm sorry, I have the sniffles. So, anyway, so I'm just going to bore you while I wait for this to come to a boil, because I'm definitely not making that same mistake a second time. So I'm not going to pause the video. While I'm waiting for it to boil, I could talk about my last video. I mentioned in my last video that it was a part 2, a before and after. It was the after video of renovating my camper. And then when I went on, a couple days later, I went on to YouTube and realized that my original video with the bowler, the one that had what the bowler looked like in the process of being renovated when it was all torn apart, is not on my channel, and I'm not entirely sure why, and it sucks because that was my best video, I thought, or at least the one that had the most views. So, sorry, I get paranoid. Okay, yeah, that's food, not a fly. I get paranoid when there's, flies flying around my food. It freaks me out. Grosses me out, I think, more than anything. Anyway, so it's disappeared, so I'm going to have to go through my computers and find out where it is, and hopefully I still have it and I can re-upload that video for anyone who's wondering, why does she have a before and after video with no before video? I do have it, it's just for whatever reason been removed. I didn't put any music or anything on it, so it's definitely not a copyright issue, so I'm not entirely sure why it got removed, but it did. So that's it. So I'm just going to give my hands a quick wipe here. Just because I was just scratching and yuck. When you're making food, you want to make sure you're always clean. Always, always clean, clean, especially when you're preserving food, because, I'm not just preserving this for me, I'm preserving it for other people. So you want to make sure that everything that you use is properly cleaned, properly sterilized, and, take pride in it. So, a big berry chunk there, so I'm just going to cut that down a bit. I don't like huge chunks in my jam. And I've taken a few votes, and I think most people prefer it that way. If I had somebody who, orders a lot of jam from me and they specifically requested large fruit, I would have no problem doing that. But for me personally, and most of the people that I talk to, they prefer their strawberry jam to be pureed as opposed to big, huge chunks of jam. Sip of coffee. Taking a coffee sip. Alright. It's decaf for anyone who thinks I drink too much coffee, which you'll find in my videos. I'm never without a coffee, so many people comment to me all the time, in life, not on my videos, but in life. They're like, oh my god, you drink so much coffee, because I do drink the equivalent of a few pots a day, but it's decaf, it's not regular. So this has come to now a sitting boil. It's not a full rolling boil. You don't need it to come to a full rolling boil. You just want to make sure that that certo is nice and cooked in there. So once that happens, you're going to start adding your sugar. Now I prefer to add my sugar a little bit at a time. You don't need to. I do about a third each time. You don't need to, but you can just add it all. But I just find it mixes in and dissolves better if you just add a little bit at a time. So you'll notice that it immediately slows down to like a trickle boil. I don't even know if that's a real thing, a trickle boil, but that's what I call it, where it kind of comes to like a simmer, just above a simmer. It's just the temperature of the sugar is cooling it down. So I'm going to turn this down just a little bit because I can feel the certo starting to stick to the bottom, and you definitely don't want that to happen, or else it won't set later. So turned it down from high down to a 9. That's good and dissolved in there. I'm going to add about another third to the pot. Oops, missed a little bit. Ooh, that's hot. Always keep a washcloth on hand when you're making jam, because boy, when this stuff sticks to stuff, as soon as it cools, it is like glue. You definitely don't want this stuff cooling on your stove or your dishes or whatever. You got a lot more work later to clean it up. So this is nice, coming along nicely. I can feel the sugar is starting to lessen. I know, my girl. Mommy's sorry. No, I can't pick you up, my girl. Mommy's busy right now, but I'll do it in a minute, okay? Yeah, I know. Mommy's very busy. What happened to your video? Eh? What happened to your video? Oh no, Mommy missed. I missed completely. What happened? Good thing it hit the plate, most of it. Only lost about a teaspoon, so that's not too bad. My girl. Go watch your video, baby girl. I know. So I'm going to leave you in silence for a minute while I wait for this to come to a boil. And I'm going to go reset her video because she shut it off. Okay, baby girl, come here. Come here, Abby. Okay, give this a quick stir. I don't want the sugar to burn to the bottom while I'm going and doing that. I know, Mommy's trying to hurry, my girl. Yeah, come on. Okay, sorry about that. So I'm going to turn this back up here because it's not coming to a full boil. Oh, okay, that didn't work anyway, so I kind of left this alone for a bit for no reason. Okay, so I made a mess there this time. Last time I was so neat. This time I've made a mess. I have sugar everywhere. Berries. Okay, Abby, no. Come on, Mommy's busy. Go watch your video. Okay, so this is going to have to come to a full boil. Now you want this at a full rolling boil for at least 1 minute. Look at your video. Do you hear it? She's only 19 months old, so she doesn't understand. And the first video that I did, she was actually sleeping, so it was so easy because I didn't have to worry about trying to keep her entertained while I was doing it. So you want this to come to a full rolling boil, and you're going to notice that it's going to start to change color. It's beginning to foam up because air is starting to get down inside the strawberry juice. So I wonder, do I have it? Oh, I have munchies for her. Here, look, popcorn crisp. Want some popcorn crisp? Look, popcorn crisp. We'll bribe her with food. See if that works. I would bribe her with jam, but believe it or not, she does not like jam. She hates it. I've tried on several occasions to get her to eat jam, and she just does not like it. She's not a fan. The only sandwich I can get her to eat is cheese and Miracle Whip. That's it. Anything else, forget it. So I just want to keep these sides scraped because the certo has a tendency to stick to the sides, and I want as much of the certo in the jam as possible, not surrounding the jam. Okay, so this is now coming to a full rolling boil. So I've set my timer for 60 seconds. You want this to boil for a full 60 seconds. You definitely don't want to take it off before then, or the certo will not be set. So you definitely want to make sure that you're boiling it properly. Need that now, and get that out of my way. You don't have to stir it while you're boiling it, but I do because I don't want to risk that anything's going to stick to the bottom of my pot. So I've about 30 seconds now, so I have a little bit better than 25 seconds, 20 seconds to go. I'm going to turn this off now because I don't want it to boil over. But see, it's still at a rolling boil. It takes a long time for these pots to cool down, as well as the stove itself. Okay, so here's my timer, so I'm going to pull this right off of the heat and give it a little bit of a stir. Now you want to be careful of bubbling because this does bubble, and sometimes you'll get a huge bubble that'll pop up, and boy, when it spits and lands on you, it is painful. It's just like hot glue when it lands on your skin. It's extremely, extremely painful. So now we're at the most tedious part of jam making. This part is the skimming portion. All of this really thick, foamy, yucky looking pinky red on top, we're going to skim all of that off. What that is all of the air that's in your berries just floating to the surface, and because the the jam is so syrupy at this point, they don't want to break, and they never will break, those bubbles. So you're going to have to skim those out of your jam, both for the purpose of preserving your jam and just to make it pretty, because it looks really ugly if it's got all this little foam inside of it. And anybody who makes jam, who knows how to make jam, knows that if you have that little foam in there, odds are your jam is probably not going to be safe for much longer than a month or two to eat. So we're going to skim it now. I'm going to start the timer for 5 minutes. It is important that you skim for the full 5 minutes. So skimming, you're just going to go around the top and you're going to pick up any large pieces of fruit that are floating to the surface, as well as any of the foam that's sitting on the top of the surface. So you want to skim all of that off. Now, I basically just told you the purpose of skimming it, but it's important. You know, some people will make jam and they figure, oh, I finished skimming it after a minute and a half or 2 minutes, so I'm not going to bother skimming it anymore. The problem with that theory is if you leave your jam to sit for another minute or two, more foam will come up to the top. More of those little air bubbles are down inside your jam and will float to the surface, and then you'll end up with foam in your jam, and you definitely don't want that. So skimming for the full 5 minutes is very important because it allows for any of the foam that's down in the bottom of the pot to rise up to the top and be properly skimmed off. Now, I'm just guessing that that's the purpose. I actually don't know that. I've never actually Googled it and said, hey, why do I have to skim my jam? This is just something that makes sense to me. because I know from experience that if I leave it sit, I'll think, okay, I'm done, and then all of a sudden a minute later I've got more foam that wasn't there a few minutes ago. And then you're going to want to stir it periodically during this process as well to help that foam and those bubbles rise to the surface. You don't want to stir it fast. You want to do a slow stir because the last thing you want to do is be creating more bubbles. So you're going to go ahead and give it a quick stir and then continue skimming. Now you lose a lot of jam and it is a sacrifice by doing this, but it is a very important step in making your jam. So I highly recommend that you do it and do it for the full, like I said, 5 minutes. So So my jars have been in the oven now, still in the heat. I've turned my oven off, but it's still maintaining the heat, and the jars are already sterilized. So I'm going to take those out right away and get them ready. We're still going to go ahead and skim for a couple more minutes. About 2 more minutes of skimming to go. Okay, so it looks like all the foam is gone, but we're going to stir it again. Funny, my last video I had all of this stuff ready to go, and now the second time around, because I was kind of rushing, I forgot a bunch of stuff, so I have to keep running and grabbing it. So see how this has taken on a whole other color now? It's lost that kind of milky look, and now it's looking very clear and dark. That's definitely what you want. That's what you want it to look like. And you're going to look for any floating pieces of fruit. Usually if fruit floats, that's because it wasn't fully ripe, and you definitely don't want non-ripe fruit in your jam because that's going to be tart or sour. So, or just, you know, no one wants little hard pieces of fruit in their jam. So any large chunks that are floating, you definitely want to take those off the top. Little harder to do if you're making a chunky jam because then there's obviously lots of berries in your jam. So it's a little harder to distinguish what's just floating because it's not ripe and what's floating because you just have so much fruit in your jam. Okay, so I'm going to call that done. So I'm going to discard this. Such a waste. And now I'm going to grab my jars out of the oven that are, like I said, already sterilized, so those are ready to go. And I'm going to switch from my stirring spoon. I'm just going to drop that in the sink actually. To my ladle. Okay, so what I have here is, I'm sure anybody who's made jam in the past knows that this is the easiest way to go ahead and add the jam to your jars. So these are very, very hot to touch. I recommend gloves highly. I personally don't use them, but my hands are kind of numb to that sort of thing. So, alright, so you're just going to add, you're going to fill the strawberries into the jar. About, I'd say about a ½ inch from the top of the jar. I try to go a little more liberal, a little more than that, not liberal, I don't know, yeah, liberal, with my berries, with my jam, just because I sell my jam, so I don't want people to be buying non-full jars of jam. So I usually fill it probably about a ¼ inch, I'd say, from the top, but a ½ inch is fine, no more than that though. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next jar. Now, if you have done this a lot so you're not making a whole lot of a mess, I would go ahead now and put your lids on right away. The quicker that you get your lids on the jar, the better seal you're going to get, and the better jam you're going to get. I'm sorry, that was really high and loud. Ooh, that's hot, 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 hot. Burning myself, burning myself. Okay, so I'm going to set these aside. Now, don't put your lids on really, really tight at first. I like to give them a few minutes. I just set them on there and give them a quick twist. And then when I'm done, all of them, then I'll pick them up and give them a really good tightening. So it's like tighten them, then remove it, then tighten them again. So then I want to, not remove it, tighten them and then tighten them a second time because they will loosen. So I usually do about 2, sometimes 3 if I'm really fast, jars at a time. Yeah. So if you enjoy watching jam making, I'm going to have a few more videos on making jams in the next several weeks because I have to make a few more different types of jam. So there'll be strawberry, blueberry, raspberry, and my personal favorite mixed berry. So there is going to be a whole bunch of jam making videos. So I hope you guys like this recipe, and if you do, feel free to just drop me a line in the comment section and let me know. And if you dislike it as well, if there's something that you think should be changed or something like that, by all means, I'm all ears. I have no problems with constructive criticism. I'm certainly not a pro. I do this often, but not on an industrial level, and I'm certainly not Betty Crocker, so I'm always open to suggestions. Now this is actually working out, I think, oh, maybe about the same. The last batch I got, for some reason I only got 7.5 jars, not even a half actually, 7 and a bit, a little bit. But like I said, I fill my jars a little more than the recipe calls for, just because I like to be a little more liberal than conservative, so stingy, so maybe that's why. The recipe very clearly says to put it at about 1/2 inch from the top. I do about 1/4 inch, so I guess I lose quite a bit that way. Ouch, ouch, ouch. That was very, very hot. Alright, so we're down to a couple more jars. I'm going to try to do this quick because once the jam cools, it takes a lot longer for it to pop. And you definitely want it to pop. Popping is very important. 3, 4, actually I'm going to get about the same as last time out of this. So now what's left here, I had a little tiny bit left over from my first batch. So I'm going to go ahead and add to that. This is just my family's jam. It's not going to be used for selling, or my husband and kids will have this eaten up in a matter of a few days, so I don't need to worry about whether or not it preserves okay or anything like that. So I'm just going to scrape the last of what's in here out of here and into this jar. No, my girl. No, don't touch. Don't touch. Yucky. Abby, no, don't touch. She's grabbing a dirty cloth off the counter. Ouch, ouch. Oh, crap, that's hot. Ooh, hot pot, hot pot. Trying to multitask with a little one in the room. Not easy. I think I was going to do a few more batches in the next hour or so, but I think I'm going to wait until she goes to bed or even feeding time so I can basically have her up and secure someplace where it's safe while I'm doing this. So once again, this jar here is just going to be thrown in my fridge. This will be used for the family, so they'll use that up in the next couple of days. So that's it. This is my jam. So now once you're done, I'm going to give all of the jars a quick squeeze. Highly recommend you use a towel or something for that because these jars are very, very hot. My little one's pulling my pants down here. Oh well, should be a little added comedy. Ouch, I suppose. So these are your jam jars. So I got from this batch 7 jars of jam out of this batch. So I'm not sure why I'm not getting 8. I think it's just because I'm adding more than the recipe calls for. The recipe says, like I said, it says to fill it 1 inch, which is about to the lid. It's about to the lid, and I fill it a little bit higher than that. So I'm thinking that that's the reason why I'm only getting about 7.5 cups instead of 8 out of a batch. So now once you've got them all in your jars, you're going to notice if you touch the top of your can, this little indent here, it pops in and pops back out. You can hear it making that sound. See? You don't want it to do that, okay? So when it's ready, you'll hear it go pop, and these will all pop, and once they pop, that means that the jam is ready, okay? So this jar here is from the batch that I made about an hour ago. You can see it's fully set. Like if I take one of these jars and I tip it sideways, I don't know where the camera ends there, you can see it's not set. It's definitely moving. This one here is fully set. So this one's about an hour ago that I did this one, and it's already set. So this is going to be a really good jar. And it's not popping at the top. It's not doing that little, oh, that one doesn't do it anymore already. A little pop sound. So anyway, so you're going to wait for those clicks, and as soon as you get a click, you can stick the labels on them and put them away or store them. These will last, you know, some people say that they're good for 6 months, some people say a year. I personally believe that they'll last a lifetime. There's no reason for them to spoil. There's nothing in them that's going to make them spoil. So these will last for 20 years until you open the jar. Once you open the jar, of course, you need to use it up. But as long as they're in the sealed jar, they'll be good for at least several years. So that's it. So that was my jam making session for today. I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. I know it's not what this channel was originally meant for, but it's kind of taken a different turn, and I'm okay with that, and I hope you guys are too. So that's it. So if you like this video and you're interested in more jam making videos or any other kind of canning videos, please leave us a message in the comment section, and I'll try as best I can to get those videos out. I'll be doing another video next week on mixed berry jam, and so that'll be coming next week, and that's it. So thank you for tuning in, and thank you for subscribing for those who did. Thank you for watching the video right to the end, and if you like this video, big fat thumbs up, and yeah, so have a good day. Ciao.